When I was a kid, I lived in a house with four walls and one door and not much more. You know, we often ate food raw because the oven was usually broken and our voices were often very softly spoken. Because the walls were very thin and the floor had these huge holes that I would fall in, and I would just sit there as quiet as death, and as soft as breath, and as still as stone. And in that place where no one would find me, I would just read and read all of the books that I got from the library. When I was a kid, I only had two t-shirts. They were old and faded and like my home, dilapidated, but I never minded that my home was an eyesore because I saw thousands of other homes every time I stepped through the library door. I had houses in Rivendell and Narnia and deepest, darkest Africa and in Wonderland, and I could go on vacation to Never Never Land, and I could transform at will into Peter Pan and Spider-Man in the library. When I was a teenager, I just had one dream. I just wanted to become a writer. You know, as this skinny kid with a huge imagination because I didn't have time for push-ups, although obviously I made time for PlayStation. I was just a dorky kid with glasses, and sometimes I would get beat up between classes, and sometimes I would come home and my parents would be fighting, and sometimes my grades would be a little bit frightening, and sometimes I would confuse the right thing with the wrong thing. But between the pages of those books, I could always find happy endings. And sad ones too, because life isn't always happy and stories shouldn't be either. But I would sit there with my head between pages, just soaking up stories for ages and ages about wizards and warlocks and mages and faraway places and where the end of space is and worlds that could be, once were, and should have been. And the library just held these innumerable portals to unknown dreams. And the librarians like these gatekeepers, and they would pass me the keys to all of the stories in the books that I'd read, and I read Margaret Atwood and Salman Rushdie, and I felt like nothing in this or any other world could stop me. Now it took time, and it took hard work, but finally the day came when I found my book sitting up on that shelf in the library. And I like to imagine some little kid, maybe skinny like me or maybe different completely, sliding that book down off their shelf into their little hands and sitting down the corridor, and beneath those bright white lights they start to put that story into their eyes, and then their imagination lights up like an Olympic torch, and they take a pen and they start to scribble their thoughts, and in that garden of knowledge a new idea is being born, and that kid listens to the sound of their brain storm and they have a home. And it's the same as mine. And it's spelled Libray.